Good, everybody. This is the second video in this series. It deals with worksheet 1b and worksheet 2. And what is different in this video is that my trinomials don't all have positive terms. So what you need to take into account is the signs of the terms, whether it's positive or a negative. So let's look at the first example. You have to factorize the trinomial x squared minus 5x plus 6. So once again, we know that my answer must be 2 brackets. So we're going to follow exactly the same steps. What is different for this now? I use the first term, which is x squared, to get the first term in my brackets. And I'm going to use 6, the last term. So the difference is now, if I add the factors of the last term, I must get a negative coefficient in the middle. So this, guys, is very important, and that's where you make most mistakes. So I have to look at factors of 6, that when I multiply gives me a positive, and when I add gives me a negative. So let's see. Factors of 6, 6 times 1, and 2 times 3. A plus times a plus give me a plus, and a negative times a negative also give me a plus. But if I add 2 positive, it's not going to give me a negative. So I can't deal with positive factors. So both must be negative, which means negative 6 times negative 1 will give me plus 6. But negative 6 plus negative 1 is going to give me negative 7. So I can absolutely not use 6 and 1. But if I use negative 2 times negative 3, when I multiply it will give me plus 6. But if I add a negative 2 and a negative 3, it will give me the coefficient of the middle term, which is negative 5. So that is what I'm going to use. So we do it exactly the same way for my first term in the bracket. Factors of x squared is x times x. Factors of 6, and now you're going to use negative 2 times negative 3. And you test it. Outside terms, if I multiply, it's going to give me negative 3x. Inside terms, when I multiply, it's going to give me negative 2x. If I add negative 2 and negative 3x, I get negative 5x, which is exactly what I want because that is my middle term. So I've got it. There's my first bracket. It will be x minus 2 times x minus 3. Done and dusted, finish and klaar. Right. So let's look at B. For B, you have to factorize x squared plus 5x minus 6. So what is different from the first one? Now my coefficient for my middle term is positive, but my last term is negative, which means that when I multiply factors of the last term, I must get a negative answer. So let's see. We're going to have 2 brackets. And then we are going to look at factors of the first term, which is factors of x squared, and factors of, in this case, negative 6. So once again, factors of negative 6 is going to be either negative 6 times plus 1 will give you negative 6, or it can be 6 times negative 1, because that will also give you negative 6. Or it will be negative 2 times plus 3, which will give you negative 6, or 2 times negative 3. So if I look at these pairs of factors, when I add them, I must get a plus 5 in the middle. The coefficient is a positive 5. So when I add them, I need more negatives than positive. Can you see negative 6 plus 1 give you negative 5? That one is out. But look at plus 6 plus negative 1. That will give you plus 5. So I can use this one. Same way, negative 2 plus a 3 will give me plus 1. That one is out. And 2 plus negative 3 give me negative 1. I can't use that. So the only pair I can use is plus 6 and negative 1. So there's my factors. Negative 1 times 6. When I multiply, it's going to give me negative 6. For x squared, it's x times x again. Right? Now, if I test it and I multiply outside terms, x with 6, I'm going to get 6x there. Sorry, I'm out of space. And if I multiply inside terms, I'm going to get negative x. So plus 6x minus x is plus 5x. Plus 5x is my middle term. So this is correct. So I can put in my factors. My first bracket will be x minus 1. So I put in x minus 1. And my second bracket will be x plus 6. So can you see? They look very similar, both trinomials, but their factors are quite different because I had to use different factors to get the coefficient in the middle. So let's look at two more. Here I have x squared minus 3x plus 2. So once again, my answer will be a bracket times a bracket. My factors is, I'm going to look at factors of x squared, factors of the first term, and I'm going to look at factors of plus 2. So x squared is just x times x once again. Factors of 2 is 2 and 1. If I add 2 and 1, I get plus 3. I don't want plus 3, I want negative 3. So it means that both factors must be negative, because negative 2 times negative 1 will give me plus 2 when I multiply, but negative 2 plus negative 1 will give me negative 3 when I add, which means that both factors must be negative. And I'm going to use negative 1 times negative 2 to give me plus 2, and then I'm going to test it. If I multiply outside terms, I get x times negative 2 is negative 2x. Inside terms gives me x times negative 1, which is negative x. If I add them, I get negative 3x, which is the jackpot because that is what I want. So I have my brackets. My first bracket is x minus 1, so you can put it terms in. And my second bracket will be x minus 2. Done. Right. So let's look at this one. Almost the same numbers, but it's a bit different. So I start again. I have my two brackets. And then I'm going to look at what numbers go in the bracket. Factors of the first term, which is factors of x squared. Once again, I don't have to tell you this anymore. You can see that is x times x. And then I have to look at the last term. The last term is negative 3. So 3 is also a prime number. So 3 also just have 3 times 1 as factors. So let's see. If I add if I multiply, my answer must be negative. So I can have negative 3 times 1 will give me negative 3. But what happens when I add it? I get negative 3 plus positive 1. So it means it's going to give me a negative 2, which is not what I want. So let's swap the signs around. If I have 3 times negative 1, I still get negative 3 when I multiply. But I have plus 3 minus 1. And voila, it gives me the coefficient of the middle term. So the factors that I have to use is negative 1 times 3. And then I test it. When I multiply outside terms, I get x times 3, which is 3x. And inside terms, x times negative 1 is negative x. 3x minus x gives me plus 2x, which is my middle term, and it is done. So you are ready. You can put your numbers in your brackets. First bracket will be x minus 1. So I have x minus 1. Second bracket will be x plus 3. So I put in x plus 3, and it's factorized. Good. Last two. Once again, I factorize x squared minus 7x plus 12. You know how it works now, so I'm going to do this very quickly. So I have my two brackets. I factorize the first term, and I get factors of x squared is x times x. Then I go to the last term, which is 12. So it's factors of 12. When I multiply, I must get a positive, but when I add, I must get a negative. Always when it's like that, it means to get a positive, the only way you can get a positive is a plus times a plus or a minus times a minus. A plus times a plus will never give you a negative 7 when you add. So you must know that you must use negative factors. So factors of 12, once again, negative 12 times negative 1 will give you plus 12, but it won't give you negative 7, so you can't use that. So negative 6 times negative 2 will give you plus 12, but negative 6 plus negative 2 will give you negative 8, so it won't give you what you want. So let's look at negative 3 times negative 4. Once again, it gives you plus 12. And when you add it, it gives you negative 7. So there's your factors. So for 12, I'm going to use negative 3 times negative 4. I test it. Outside terms gives me negative 4x. Inside terms give me negative 3x. When I add, I get negative 7x, which is the middle term of my trinomial, which means I'm done. My first bracket, x minus 3, I put it in. My second bracket, x minus 4, I put it in, and I am done. Answered, factorized, finished. Last one for today is almost the same thing again. So we're going to see how quick we can do this. We have a bracket times a bracket. And I'm going to look at factors of my first term, which is factors of x squared, which is going to be x times x. But then factors of negative 12, which when I multiply will give me negative 12, but when I add will give me negative 4. So let's once again write the factors. So I'm going to not put signs in here now. I've got 2 times 6, and I've got 3 times 4. So one of these factors in every time must be a negative. So I need to get negative 4 when I add. So you can see that 12 and 1 is not going to, 12 minus 1 is 11, and negative 12 plus 1 will give you negative 11. So that doesn't work. So that one is not out. Negative 2 plus 6 will give me plus 4. But plus 2 plus negative 6 will give me negative 4. I want negative 4 because the coefficient of my middle term is negative 4. So I can definitely use that. And because I want a negative answer, the biggest factor must be negative. I want more negative. So I'm just not even going to bother with the last one. I can use these two factors. So I'm going to get for 12, 2 times negative 6 will give me negative 12. Test it. Outside terms, x times negative 6 is minus 6x. And x times 2 will give me 2x. If I add plus 2 minus 6x, I get minus 4x, which is what I want. So I've got my factors. First bracket is x plus 2. Let's Let's put it in. And second bracket is x minus 6. And I am done. The factors of x squared minus 4x minus 12 is x plus 2 times x minus 6 brackets. I hope that helped.